Good afternoon from beautiful Brisbane, Australia. It's gorgeous Sunday afternoon, but I wanted to pop by and say g'day and talk to you about overcoming nightmares. Now, this is going to sound funny because I'm excited because I had a nightmare, but I am because I had the nightmare and then I was able to put into a logical sequential order what we can do when we have a nightmare in order that we can move through it progressively and relatively quickly and then, be able to go back to bed depending on what time it is, get up and have the rest of our day without our whole internal nervous system and the wiring in our brain being absolutely wired to hyperarousal, and then that makes us very tired and unwell. Now, I did this morning and it worked a treat. So the first thing that we want to do when we wake up, I'll see if I can put this up here for you, is we want to get our body moving. So we know that when we wake up from a nightmare that we feel absolutely wired, we're terrified. If we could stop and breathe, we would, but we literally wake up terrified. So the first thing I knew to do was to get myself moving. So I got up and I started walking, but be careful when you do, because remember, we're on hyperarousal. We're not breathing very well. We're possibly dissociating, and so we just want to take it easy. And as you do this too, you'll be aware that it's hard to get going. It really is hard to move because we are on that freeze mode. All right. So as you get moving, you want to intellectually, you want to intentionally focus your mind on your breathing. So as you get up, you start to move the body a bit. Make sure that you're balanced, because balance is one thing that can be offline at this point in time. And we want to focus on the breath and making it deeper. So breathing in, forcing ourselves to breathe in. Pardon me. I'm so sorry. It's late Sunday afternoon. And if we can't breathe in sufficiently enough, we want to breathe out. So push the breath out until we can breathe in. Now you're moving around the house slowly, deliberately, and you're focusing your mind on your breathing. And you're doing all of this because it's the opposite of freeze mode, okay? We don't want to stay on freeze mode. We don't want to be in that hyperarousal state because it feels like, walking on hot tin nails or something. It's just so painful. And as we move around, we want to become aware of our body. It's hard to become aware of your body, but you want to, even if you start just rubbing bits and pieces, just build that awareness however you could. For me, while I was focusing my mind on my breathing, I was actually trying to look at what my hands and feet were doing. So becoming intentional about where they were moving, how they were moving, and where I was moving to. I then began to speak out loud the affirmations, I am safe and I can manage this. Again, because we're speaking the words out loud, it's the opposite of what hyperarousal freeze mode does. So hyperarousal / freeze mode shuts us right down. So if we're using our voice as well, then we're going against what our body, brain, mind want to do. All right, so it really, really does help. Then next, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, and it sounds funny, but it was really hard to see my face. But then that's when I realised, I went, this has gone to the state of dissociation. So what I did is I marched up and down. You can't see me doing it. I marched up and down in place. So opposite leg, so left leg and right arm together, and vice versa. And as I marched in place, did the breathing and said the affirmations, I became really aware of energy shifting away and out of me. And I became aware of my strength coming back, I became aware that it was less fog, and we all know what that fog is like. Okay, it gets really foggy. So as I continued to march, because when we move opposite arm and leg together, we're making our brain use parts that are offline and focused on the hyperarousal, on the alarm system's gone off, and we're on, well, we're wired. I would say we're wired for sound, but we're actually wired to, take off or freeze. We freeze and breathe shallow so that, perhaps we won't be seen or heard. So as I did this, right, so I'm standing in front of the mirror, and let's face it, I felt like a bit of an idiot this morning standing in front. Yes, Gabrielle, that's right. This is how I broke the dissociation from having a nightmare. I woke up from a nightmare this morning. I was terrified. I got up, I moved, and all the steps on there. And so when I'm standing in front of the mirror and I'm breathing, so I'm intentionally slowing my breath down and breathing in and out, and I'm moving my arms and legs different, it makes the brain work. So the brain, the limbic system in the brain is on full-blown alert that, it's terror. We're terrified. But what we want to do is make the other part of our brain work and hook in to the limbic system so it makes order out of it. So instead of the emotions going everywhere, when the prefrontal cortex hooks back in, we can make those emotions feel in an order that we can manage, okay? So as I was marching, breathing, saying, I am safe, I can manage this, I am safe, I can manage this, I could literally feel the layers shifting from around me. Then I could literally see my face becoming clear in the mirror, all right? So my eyes were beginning to return to normal. And I went, wow, this, like trying to look in the mirror when you're dissociated, I went, who'd have thought that doing something so simple made it so real that I couldn't see? So, and I've known since I've done the neurologically, all the study, that side of it, that perception, so what we can see, is offline when we're in freeze mode as well. So as I stood there in front of the mirror, my eyes, it became clearer, and my face in the mirror became more clear. And I went, this is amazing. But the best thing was to come. As I'm there and I'm persisting with the marching, okay, it's not just I'll do one bit of march, we've got to keep going until we can feel all our emotions are regulated again. So we're like, we feel safe and we feel calm inside, and the terror shifted. So part of me wanted to just give up and go, oh, for the love of all things, I'm going back to bed. But I went, no, I have to know that I can move through this. Now, this is important to know because when we're in the further stages of the recovery to remission pathway, our body processes the deepest fears that we've held on to for a very, very long time. So what happened was, as the dissociation began to cease, I began to feel comfortable to feel what the emotion was that drove the nightmare, or vice versa. And it was this fear that I would end up alone. Now, when we're babies, we need people, okay? We need to know that we will never be alone. It's part of our emotional need, our wiring that we need. And so I went, oh my goodness, that just makes so much sense. So what we want to do is we want to be brave. We want to get our brave on, and we want to, we have to be willing to say, okay, if I get it through and I make it through the dissociation, then I'm going to be able to feel what was driving the terror. Okay. And when we can feel it, when we can own it, we can go, right. And I actually burst out laughing. So I went from terrified, waking up terrified from a nightmare, to doing all of these steps and then laughing and going, oh, that's so funny, because what am I? I am alone. As in, I'm not alone and I have rich relationships, but I am alone as in I'm single, and I do my own life. And I just went, and it's wonderful. The reality is my life is very, very precious and wonderful. So when we've got the strength, the knowledge, the equipping, the integration all happening, the fears come up that we've held on to for so long, and then we're able to look around as an adult and say, yeah, it's not really a reality that I need to carry anymore because it was from childhood. Gabriel said, do I recall the nightmare? No, not now, I don't. I know when I first woke up, there was just, it was a lot of chaos that happened in the nightmare. But I don't remember all the ins and outs of it anymore at all. To be honest, it's like, no, I'd have to really strain my brain to think about it, and I don't want to do that because it's like conquering a mountain and you go, yeah, the worst thing that I thought could happen as a child happened, and it's the best life I've ever had. So, and we are wired, absolutely we are wired to do life together. And there's no way that beliefs like that come up unless we are wired into community, okay? We have to have a support system. We're not going to be able to let those emotions up out of our body unless we feel safe and we know that it's not the truth. They will stay in our body. It's not something that we can go, oh, you know, because of all these things, I obviously feel that way and, you know, I'm over that. I call BS, okay, because it doesn't work that way. This is not a conscious process because the triggers, the wiring of the triggers happens deep back in our unconscious. We don't know what's there till it comes up, but I can tell you we don't get to release it. Well, our brain protects us and it won't release it until we've put a whole lot of different aspects into place. Gabriel said you don't have to disclose anything too personal. No, honestly, if I remembered it, I just remember darkness, chaos, and the word war. But I'm always happy to tell you guys everything because it always helps someone. But my first thought was that I woke up and the front of my mind, like in the front of my mind here, was just sheer terror. And then I came to a conscious awareness that I'd actually woken up after a nightmare. So with nightmares, sometimes I can remember, but most often not. It's the after effect of the nightmares that is really challenging for everyone. Like, you know, I've woken up from a nightmare. What the heck do I do now? Especially because it's when it's this unconscious stuff, we don't remember. Whereas yesterday, I woke up from a dream and I can tell you today what that dream was about, what it meant, how I needed to look at things differently in my life. But nightmares are straight from the unconscious when we're doing this kind of processing. So yeah, I will put the overcoming nightmares sheet that I did up in the comments down below when I get off here as well, so that you can have a read through it, you can print it out, you can stick it on your mirror, do whatever you need so that the next time you do have a nightmare, you remember each step. And I have explained on the printout too what each step is doing. Okay, thanks for joining in, you guys. I better go and get tomorrow's class ready. And I'll see you all in class, or I'll see you around the interwebs throughout the week. Thanks for joining in. Bye for now.